Welcome to our first workshop. We're going to start by looking at and creating a logic model for your organization. The logic model is going to lay a really solid foundation for understanding how your business works, the resources that you need to run it, and how those resources end up generating the outcomes that you want for your mission. And if you have the opportunity to do this exercise with a colleague or coworker, that can be really helpful. If you don't have the opportunity to go through it and do it with them, I'd highly recommend that after you've completed your work, making sure that you run it past other people at your organization and get buy-in around that. Before we get started, I want to give you a layout of some of the materials that I'd recommend you using for this. Number one, if you're interested in doing this exercise with pen and paper, make sure that you have a stack of Post-it notes. If you can find them in different colors, that can be really helpful. Secondly, download the PDF worksheet that has a link in this workshop description so that you can use that to build your logic model. If you're more of a digital person, there's a link in the workshop description that will take you to an online version of the logic model worksheet in Google Docs. You can either use it within your Google Docs or you can download it as an Excel spreadsheet and use it from there. Everybody should download the Full Circle Fund logic model example. Again, the link is in the workshop description. So before you get started, if you don't have those already, pause the video, take some time to go collect your resources and materials that you need. So what is a logic model, right? A logic model is a roadmap of how your organization functions. It's going to help you understand how you create the ultimate impact or your mission success. It's composed of strategies, interventions or activities, outputs, outcomes, and then finally your ultimate impact. And the ultimate impact really is the blue sky vision for the work that you're going to accomplish if everything turns out correctly. Throughout the rest of this workshop series, as I said before, we're going to be referring to this blueprint as we go through the process of building our communications campaigns, because it's really important to understand what the outputs and outcomes are that are going to drive your mission forward, and the logic model is going to help us do that. So why is a logic model even important, right? Number one, from a process perspective, oftentimes going through this exercise can be more helpful or more valuable than the actual end result. To do this, as I mentioned before, it can be really helpful to do this with a team or a coworker or a colleague to get validation and buy-in. It's going to get everybody on the same page as they work through it together. If you can't build this together, then I'd highly recommend, once you have built it, to vet this with colleagues and get everybody on the same page. From a clarity perspective, it gets everybody moving in the same direction, understanding where the org is going, how it functions, and what the different pieces are doing. Maybe you have multiple programs at your organization. It gives people an understanding of how those programs function together. It also allows us to say no. We oftentimes are approached with funding opportunities or programmatic opportunities that don't necessarily fit within our sweet spot. And so by understanding the blueprint or the roadmap of how we achieve our work, this can give us real clarity around things that may be distractions to our mission. It also communicates to funders how your organization works, and it gives them a really clear vision of the fact that you understand how your organization works. Sometimes that can be a big barrier in communicating competencies to funders. And then finally, on the communications and messaging side of things, it helps you build impact messaging, which we're going to talk about later on in the workshop series when we start to talk about developing messaging. It helps us articulate the problem that we're going to be trying to solve. And again, we'll talk more about that. It helps us also articulate where you're going in the future. It lays out a vision for you to project out into the world, as well as talk about internally with your staff, which can be absolutely very, very important. And then finally, it helps us develop what we call the why. And we're going to talk more about this again in the messaging section of the workshop series. But it's a really critical and core element to any time you're communicating with people, especially constituents or your internal teams. So today, the step-by-step process that we are going to walk through is as follows. And each of these is going to be a step that we're going to take. We'll give you a chance to actually go through the exercise. And then at the end, you will have a logic model that you can work with. So first off, the first step here is going to be creating our ultimate impact and our problem statements. The second step is going to be building out our activities and outputs. The third step is going to be grouping those activities and outputs into what we call strategies. And then finally, we're going to be defining the outcomes that those strategies generate. Throughout this workshop, we're going to be referring to Full Circle Fund's logic model that we have as an example. It's a really great way to kind of follow along and have an example of an organization's logic model. Full Circle Fund is a partner and a client of Rooted's, and we've really loved working with them on this process. Full Circle Fund has a membership-based organization model that brings leaders who work in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors together. These members use their skills and cash donations in hands-on work to help nonprofit grant partners solve challenges that are holding back their mission success. So they have kind of this dual approach to their mission where they're building strong, diverse, and skills-based memberships while they're also needing to vet nonprofits that they want to work with. So when you look at how their logic model is put into place, I'm going to give you a little bit of an orientation around the different pieces of the puzzle. So first off, you can see at the top, their ultimate impact statement is written out, and then at the bottom, they have their problem statement. Secondly, in the middle section, you can see the activities, and those activities are directly tied to outputs. Some activities lead to the same outputs, but it's really important to note that all activities lead to some direct output. At the top with the icons, you can see that they have what we call strategies. So a strategy is a collection of activities and outputs that lead to eventual outcomes. The outcomes on this particular logic model are closer to the bottom, just above the problem statement. So we're going to walk you through step by step today how to build out each of these elements with the end result being your very own logic model. So in the next video, we're going to start with step 1, defining our ultimate impact and our problem statement. So take a second to review some of these materials, and then we're going to get started in the step 1 video.